Meanwhile, the government shutdown is now the longest in history, and neither side seems closer to a deal. For this story and more, we go to our 360 panel from our political panel. Former Florida Democratic Party Chair Mitch Ceasar and GOP strategist Slavator La Mastra joining us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be here, Scotty.
Nice to be here.
Fantastic. Okay, Mitch, I have to start with you. On the first Friday where government officials are getting a paycheck that literally have zero in the sum total box, how can Democrats justify their little beach retreat to Puerto Rico, even a justification of a private jet, and even 109 lobbyists included? Please tell me there's a good reason for this.
Well, the first good reason is because it was planned a year ago, way before the shutdown. The second good reason is there are no meetings scheduled. The third good reason is Nancy Pelosi, although reported erroneously, was never on the trip. This was a trip planned to look at the devastation of Puerto Rico. Even more relevant, actually, now, because the president has threatened to take their disaster funds from them. Remember, this is a White House that was very gleeful and said, gee, only 64 people died in the Puerto Rico storm. We now know the number was about 3,000. So they went to see Hamilton. That was the break. They paid for their own tickets, believe it or not. And it was a fact-finding situation. It wasn't just the Hispanic caucus there. Jerry Nadler, who's the chair now of a major committee in the House, was there. It was a fact-finding trip. Yes, it's a group, and frankly, lobbyists go to everything, including meetings of the Freedom Caucus.
Well, I agree, and we're going to hit the Republicans, obviously, with Sal in a minute, but come on, Mitch, you know, you would have seen if they were actually out there finding and touring devastated areas. All I saw were pictures of Menendez with a girl in a bikini all over the media and the papers. So if there were actually tours of areas that are still devastated, you would think they would have called the media to follow them in there. That's the thing. So, Sal, Republicans and their conservative media allies were so quick to jump on top of this, including Donald Trump Jr., who tweeted it out. Yet very few mainstream media outlets actually covered this. What do you think the response would have been if it would have been a GOP retreat on the beach this past weekend with the government shutdown?
I don't think it would have been any different. Remember,
I think we would have seen...
Sal, I'm sorry. Sal.
No problem. I think we would have seen a media firestorm that would have called for the resignation of everybody on that trip. That would have been painted as elitist Republicans not caring about the people, going off on a supposedly vacation with a little bit of work there involved, and not paying attention to the people affected by this shutdown. And it's definitely hypocrisy on the part of the media. Your other guest, Mitch, is definitely right. It was planned pretty far in advance, but, you know, when you have a shutdown like this, the longest in history, people being affected, that's where you cancel plans like this. Maybe don't send everybody within the Hispanic caucus, send a few, go down, tour the site, report back, and let everyone stay in Washington and try to figure out a solution to this problem is what should have been done.
Well, that's the thing, Sal. Republicans aren't necessarily known for being thrifty in the past. So who has a worse problem with optics at this point, considering we are in the longest shutdown in history? The Republicans or the Democrats, even with the weekend beach party that happened? Who's winning in the optics war, Sal?
Well, the Democrats, I think, will win most of the time just because they have a majority of the media on their side. They paint the picture more favorably for the Democrats. And so if you're a Republican, you're always going to have a much tougher time when it comes to optics. And right now, all you're hearing about is the shutdown and what President Trump is doing. You have this new Russia story out that you touched on. And so it's going to be tough to get it out. And it's, you know, up to the people and God, we have social media to, you know, shed light on things like this that, you know, aren't the best.
I was thinking, we'll talk about optics. Mitch, you have new Governor Gavin Newsom, who was just sworn in. And minutes after being sworn in California, he promised that every illegal immigrant in California will be added to the state health plan. Now, granted, California actually has this budget surplus right now. However, they have the highest gas tax in the country, and the teachers right now in LA are protesting because they want a salary raise. Do you think that the governor is going to stick to this promise that he made just minutes after being put into office? And do you think it actually helps the people of California?
I do believe he'll stick to it. This is a blueprint started by Jerry Brown, frankly. What this is dealing with a little bit of the reversal of the Obamacare philosophy and coverage. Remember, this has to be approved by the state legislature, which it has not done. I think something that's not been talked about with this, although I think he's trying to lead the country in a blue perspective, and I understand that for sure, is that they need a cheap labor market in California. They said that for a long time, including the Republican electeds, who've said because of the vegetable industry, the fruit industry, they need a lot of help there. So I think he's trying to be altruistic while also trying to deal with the economics of the labor market. I do want to add one comment of a bad photo op, so to speak, and that's from Florida, specifically Rick Scott, who just became the U.S. Senator and won by 1/10 of 1 point. With all this going on, he recently held his own inaugural ball, talking about bad optics and talking about going to Puerto Rico. And he's asked for everybody to maximize a $100,000 donation for his inaugural ball. That's a bad optic.
Well, there's obviously bad optics on both sides, but Sal, I have to ask you, doesn't what Gavin Newsom said in California, doesn't this justify why many Republicans are saying we need a wall because we're going to continue funding for those that might not necessarily be paying into the system?
Exactly. Where do we draw the line? I mean, we see the caravans coming over, a new one starting to form. I mean, this is just more of the same, more of an enticement for people to come across the border illegally. And I think it's just another thing, I think, by most Americans to say, you know, what are you doing for me? What have you done? I'm like you said, the teachers going on strike today in L.A. Due to lack of funding and overcrowding. And what is this going to do? And it's going to bring in people from other states to crowd the ERs, to crowd their medical treatment there in California. Just like with Obamacare, they said the price would go down, ER visits would go down. They were all increased under Obamacare. And I mean, you have something similar in New York with de Blasio offering, you know, free health care to all illegals within New York City. And, you know, when you're an illegal, you don't have a passport, you don't have a birth certificate, driver's license, you don't have a green card, any type of work visa. So you have no documentation you have to show. So what prevents, you know, the average American who's paying, you know, 500, 600, 700% more on their healthcare premiums to show up at these places, say they're illegal, and get the free healthcare? It's just going to tax the system even more. And it just shows the people that the Democrats, what are they doing for the American people? Why do they care more about illegal aliens than they do hardworking Americans, hardworking taxpayers?
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.